And now we get to move on from that was What's Brewing, presented by our friends of the High Alpine Brewing Company out in Gunnison. And now we get to go to Splinters on the Pine. What's been getting at us, getting sticking in our craw for the past week? I'll let you go first because I started with What's Brewing. What do you got for Splinters on the Pine?
So this is a little bit of a What's Brewing, but at the same time, it's kind of funny, but it's a heartwarming story. Please, everybody, get off my man J.R. Smith's back. The guy is living life. He is playing golf.
Who's talking shit about that?
Everyone's like, man, JR is he's realizing what is like in the real world, and he shouldn't be playing D1 golf and blah 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 blah. And I think it's bullshit. The guy, if he's good enough to make the team, I am gonna throw on fucking golf. I will throw on. I think it's oh my god, what's the school name? I think it's North Carolina A&T or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, A&T. I'm gonna watch the golf beats because I want to watch JR play golf. Fuck yeah, I will, because I love me some J.R. Smith, two-time NBA champion, by the way. Don't forget, two-time NBA champion J.R. Smith. Everybody's been shitting on him about, I mean, not everybody, but there's been a majority of people that are like, this isn't fair. And like, the dude's going back getting his education. And he's not
taking a scholarship from anybody.
He's not, I mean, he technically could be on the college golf team. But still, the guy is paying his way. He's getting an education.
He's not taking money from any of the other members of the team.
And I think it's fantastic what he's doing. And I think, like I said, I mean, I'm playing because on Wednesday I'm playing the TPC Scottsdale with the Waste Management Open. As you're hearing this, I'm probably playing it right now. But like it's a great like golf is one of those sports where it's good to have entertainment. J.R. Smith, man, I love J.R. for everything he did in Denver. I mean, I think every Nuggets fan ever loved J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith was a guy where he did not care how bad of a shooting night he was. You knew he was going to pull up from the logo before he was cool and drain one with a hand in his face. Like JR is that cool of a guy, and the two-time NBA champion. I think it's awesome. People will just need to relax. I know it's weird that he's 38 years old or something stupid like that, and he's in college and he's playing golf. I think they're D1 school. But lay off. The guy's living life. He's going through the same struggles that all of us had. I love his Twitter. He's been like, man, these fucking exams suck. And he was like he's tweeting out some funny shit. But shout out JR. People need to get off his back because I will have no JR slander ever on my timeline.
No, if you're slandering JR at this, you're just a very unhappy person, and you're going after somebody who's making himself happy. I'll make one request on behalf of the Benchwarmers. Since you're playing a golf course on Wednesday, can we get at least one hole where we get the drive, see how well the swing has progressed, so people can go back and watch the FEOTB Invitational?
Yeah. A birthday swing, maybe we'll be able to do that. But yeah, it's a super nice course. They don't have the stands up like they would at Waste Management Open, but yeah, I'm super excited to go. My mom and my brother and I are going to one of the most beautiful golf courses in Arizona, so should be a fun time. It's supposed to rain, but it's been 108 degrees here in Arizona all week, so I'm hoping that it's not above 100 degrees. Let's put it that way.
I can't believe it took us this long to get into the podcast before we wish you a happy birthday, because this podcast is dropping on your 24th birthday.
Yeah, so, it's Mamba year, baby. It's Mamba year.
Mamba year. Happy birthday, Nico. And now we get to transition. We get to transition now to our fantasy football talk. We did this last week. I forgot. I'm a huge fan of The League, the old show on FXX.
It's a great league. Yeah, it's a great show.
Can't get enough of it. So I'm rewatching that now that we're talking about fantasy football. But people enjoyed our running backs and quarterbacks. I'm sure people had really big problems. Jeremy probably lit you up for both of us after we dropped last week's episode, because I know that he likes to tell us how dumb we are when we make takes like that. But we're going to move on now to two different position groups, wide receivers and tight ends, and we'll finish up next week with defenses and special teams. But we're going to go receivers first. So my top five, I'll go in descending order. So I'll start with five. I have Justin Jefferson, 5, A.J. Brown, 4, Stephon Diggs, 3, Devontae Adams, 2, and DeAndre Hopkins 1. So what are your top 5 for wide receivers?
My top 5, I got Justin Jefferson 5. I have Stephon Diggs 4. And I have Tyreek Hill 3, DeAndre Hopkins 2, Devontae Adams 1. My reasoning for behind mine, Tyreek Hill is still top 5 receiver. I don't care how shit of a person he is. I don't care how much I hate him being on the Chiefs. That dude dropped 60 points for me in a fantasy football week last year. If Tyreek Hill is available there for you in the second round, you take him. Let's put it that way. DeAndre Hopkins and Tyreek Hill are two guys I can switch around, but D-Hop is the number one option there. And Devontae Adams is the weapon for Aaron Rodgers. Is the weapon. And I think Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are going to have themselves a last dance kind of year. So that's why I'm still riding Devontae Adams as the number one receiver. But yeah, with those three, Diggs and Jefferson are interesting to me because Diggs is the option in Buffalo. Like, they don't have a whole lot outside of him. And Justin Jefferson, can Kirk Cousins get the ball out to him is the question. And then with your list, I didn't have any problems with it. The only problem is A.J. Brown. With Julio there, how productive is he going to be? He is – I would say he's almost a third option still, which is a little bit weird talking about because he's a great receiver. Don't get me wrong. But him being a third option, because Derrick Henry's number 1, 2, and 3, and then Julio's up there too. So that's where I'm a little hesitant on AJ Brown. But there's a good receiving core. But I think it's a very important though, receivers especially though, to get one good guy. You get one of these top crop of guys, then you're set. Then the rest trickle in, but you gotta hit on one guy because if you leave receivers until because people like to draft two running backs right away, and they like to go quarterback 2 real quickly. You're going to be struggling for finding good receivers then in the back end because there's some guys that are hit or miss, huge hit or miss guys. Mm-hmm. And with these top 5, top 6, AJ Brown included, we're talking about these are guys that are must starts every single week.
I think another thing to look at for receivers is who did the team bring in around them, and that's why I have DeAndre Hopkins as my number 1 because Arizona went out and brought in AJ Green. Now I don't think AJ Green is the AJ Green of 2011, obviously, but that's going to open up some more of the field for Kyler Murray to find DeAndre Hopkins. We know that he's going to throw it down there anyways. Fuck it, D-Hop's down there somewhere. Yeah, that's the whole thing from last season. So I think that's good. I could have probably. My sleepers for the receivers were CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones. I could have probably flipped any of the sleepers with A.J. Brown because if A.J. Brown's not in your top of your draft board, he's a definite. If you're there with the 4th round and A.J. Brown's on the board, fucking grab him.
I do got A.J. Brown already on one of my teams. I will say that he is one of my number 1 receivers. But yeah, the AJ Brown could be really tough. For my sleepers, I have Chase Claypool, who's going to be a 6th round pick. People forget Chase Claypool was a very, very productive flex in a lot of leagues. Debo Samuel, he's going to be the number 1 receiving option. If Trey Lance is a starting quarterback, look out. Debo Samuel can put up video game type numbers. He could have himself a hell of a season. And then my last sleeper, Carla Sutton coming back with with Teddy Bridgewater being the quarterback. Carla Sutton is going to get a lot more looks because he's not a guy who's going to hit you over the top. Carla Sutton will craft you up, be with those short out routes, those post patterns. Like he's not going to hit you 75 over the top like KJ Hamler will. So look for Sutton to be a good guy in PPR leagues especially.
He runs the best 12-yard out. He ran one to get a first down on Saturday, and then he also ran one to score with Teddy in. But Cortland Sutton's got that out route and the comeback route down. But no, I think especially if you're going to wait for receivers, then you got to hopefully hit on one to also be your flex because like you were saying with Chase Claypool, if you're going to draft a guy there and you haven't drafted up until that point, you want to have some flexibility. So if you're struggling at receiver, be sure to try and at least find somebody with some explosiveness for flex. I think CeeDee Lamb, if you have one of the top receivers that we mentioned, and then you get a CeeDee Lamb as a flex, that's going to be huge. Chris Godwin, I think, especially now having a full season and a full off season with Tom Brady, we're underestimating how much of a connection that's probably going to be. Chris Godwin is that guy.
Yeah, Godwin, honestly, and Mike Evans have been dropping on a lot of fantasy drafts, honestly, lately. I got Mike Evans on one of my teams already, too, and it's it was weird to me. Mike Evans was there in the 5th or 6th round last year. I remember Mike Evans putting up 30+ points in a few weeks. Like the dude, both those receivers, they trade off. Obviously, one guy has a hot week, the other one doesn't. That's why it's a little bit. Well, that's why they're dropping, honestly. But one of those guys could be very, very, very consistent because Tom Brady loves both those guys. Godwin is the. I know it's weird to compare these guys, but he is the Wes Welker, the slot guy, compared to Mike Evans being the Randy Moss of sorts, even though they're not comparable, but you know what I mean. That's how Tom Brady uses his weapons, and Godwin with his speed and Mike Evans with his tough brute force. Those are really two really good guys. Don't get both, but I would try and look for one of those because it's important. It's important that when you look at position groups, don't pick two of the same guys on the same position, or sorry, same team with the same position. So you should never have two receivers on the same team on your team, if that makes sense. Because you should look around. If I have a guy like Carla Sutton, I don't go out and get Jerry Jeudy, because if I start both them, one guy's going to be taken away from the other, if that makes sense. So that's where you got to take some of these things into factor. Also with both these position groups, if you have a tight end for a team, don't necessarily pick their receivers.
Yeah, and bye weeks are a thing, and that's another reason why you probably shouldn't have guys at the same position on the same team. I was kind of thinking too, and this will be a good way to move into our top 5 tight ends. These two positions work off each other very well because, like we were saying, getting a receiver late for a flex, you could also get a tight end late for a flex, and sometimes that's a good option. But for the top 5 tight ends, I have them starting with 5. I got Noah Fant. Number 4, Darren Waller. Number 3, Bobby Tunyon. Number 2, George Kittle. And number 1, Travis Kelce. Number 2 and number 1 are close. I will say that, but I do still have Kelce as number 1. What do you got for your rankings?
I'm gonna argue here. I think Kelce is far and away the number 1 because the dude will give you the best production point wise of any tight end by far and away.
I'll give you far and away because he's not injured either, and I gave him the edge over Kittle because Kittle's coming off injury.
The only problem I would have with picking up Travis Kelce for your team is that he doesn't have a beard anymore. That's what you got going against you, really. But for me,
before you go, this is also where him not blocking doesn't matter because for
fantasy, you don't give a shit. And this is the perfect tight end for that. George Kittle is more the blocking, but brute force. So I have Noah Fant 5. I have TJ Hawkinson at 4. Hawkinson's a guy that Detroit has no fucking weapons.
He's the only bright spot.
He's the only bright spot they have. Yeah. So I honestly, Jared Goff is going to dump and play to him all year long, honestly. So that's why I like him. I have Darren Waller 3. I think I have Kittle 2, obviously, and Kelce 1. The two guys that are interchangeable for me is Waller and Kittle, because Kittle coming off that injury. Darren Waller is the number 1 option too in Vegas. Darren Waller is a brute force. Dude's an absolute dog. I hate saying that, but Darren Waller is a guy that if you're honestly in round 3, end of round 3, early round 4, if Darren Waller is there, you snag him. You pick him up right away because Darren Waller should not be falling that far. The dude is the number 1 option in Vegas. And when Vegas is successful, that's when Darren Waller is at his best.
He's a typical flex size too, because he'll make an impact if he is able to take over a game. I have issue. I told you I was gonna put bump Fant for Hawkinson. I think Hawkinson has been playing just as well as Noah Fant. I think Fant might be a little bit more explosive. But then thinking about it, I'm like, if worst case scenario, if all things go to shit in Detroit, Jared Goff's not the quarterback throwing to TJ Hawkinson. It would be David Blau. Yeah. Or Blau, however you say it. I'm like, I'm not focused. If there's a possibility that guy's playing, I am not. I already have enough issue banking on the fact that Jared Goff will be able to get TJ Hawkinson the ball. So that's why he fell a little bit for me. But then sleepers at the tight end position, I put Mike Gesicki. I saw him a little bit lower than I thought he would.
Tight end for the Dolphins.
Yeah. From also former Penn State. He was there with Trace McSorley. Then Hunter Henry.
On time.
Hunter Henry, now in New England, former Los Angeles Charger, and Mark Andrews is my last sleeper. So guys that are all big athletic guys that can move and are good targets over the middle. These are guys that are safety blankets.
Hunter Henry I like a lot because Mac Jones loved the tight end position also and the short out routes too and Alabama. So I think Hunter Henry could have a very, very productive year. For my sleepers, I have Evan Ingram. I think with Daniel Jones, that's going to be his dump off guy too. It's whether or not Ingram is a top 8 type tight end when he's healthy. He has not been healthy at all. That's the problem he's got going for him. Another guy that I like a lot that people are sleeping on is Austin Ferguson for Tennessee. Look, Tannehill loved using Delaney Walker and Jonnu Smith over there. Like when all the eyes are going to be looked on Julio, AJ Brown, Derrick Henry, that means somebody is going to be open. And I think that's going to be Ferkser. Ferkser is a guy that's not going to be your number 1 tight end. Don't get me wrong. That's a guy that could be a consistent starter at the flex position, honestly. And so I would look out for Ferkser a lot. And then my last sleeper, I have Tyler Higbee because Stafford loved using Hawkinson in Detroit. And I think Tyler Higbee in LA could be a guy that fits perfectly in, and Stafford is going to look to be consistently the guy to dump it off to at the tight end position. And Higbee is a pretty big dude too as well.
Similar prototypes. It makes sense for tight ends. You want to go, like we said, you don't care if they can block. I think somebody, I didn't put him in just because I don't know if he's going to be as big of a freak at the next level, but if Kyle Pitts, that might be one that you maybe gamble on, especially if it's like 2nd or 3rd round and nobody's grabbed him, because the dude is an alien. If he is going to be that good, if he's going to translate to the NFL level, that would be a hell of a gamble to take and pay off. Be like, I drafted Kyle Pitts, 3rd round. He was like a backup tight end, and then
I don't know about 3rd round Kyle Pitts. I think maybe he's a guy that a lot of people are taking after George Kittle. Right now, the conversation has been Darren Waller or George Kittle. I still think Kyle Pitts has a lot to prove.
I don't know how you don't go with Travis Kelce because the dude almost led the league.
No. The guy after Travis Kelce. What I'm saying, once Travis Kelce's off the board, people have been deciding on whether going Kyle Pitts or Darren Waller. After Kittle, after Kelce are gone, that's what the conversation has been because they think Kyle Pitts can be his dog. But we just don't know what we're going to get from Atlanta. We really don't because they could be halfway decent because their offense isn't terrible. They just have no running game. But their defense is going to be ass. So that team could win some stupid games by putting up points and get you some great. Calvin really is a receiver that could be on the lookout. Without Julio down there, could be a really good production as well.
They're still going to have Matt Stafford. So Falcons players are always
Matt Ryan.
Jesus. Oh, man. We got to get into football season so I can be on all my P's and Q's. I'm getting that's my first jumping off sides in the preseason. So, but no, having Matt Ryan, the Atlanta receivers especially, always liable to pick. Might not be a bad option. Out of the 2 positions, wide receivers and tight ends, before we move on, what do you think? Where do you think people should focus on? Should they go tight end? Should they go receiver? How would you put your board going into a big draft?
I'm going to go on a limb here, a little bit of a hot take here. I'm going to pick tight ends because I think the tight end position is not as deep as receiver position. I think you can very well get a good receiver late in the draft that's a make or break guy that really shocks the world. I don't see a whole lot from the tight end position. I see the studs at the top, but I don't see a guy like maybe Noah Fant, but Noah Fant's like a top 5 guy, top 6 guy. Like that's still a guy that's at the top of leaderboards draft wise. So I would honestly focus on tight end position because tight ends are very similar to quarterbacks in a sense where you want a consistent guy. Your majority of your points are going to come from your receivers, especially in a PPR league, and your running backs. That's where the meat of your points are going to come from. The tight end position, you need a guy that's going to come in, get you 8 to 12 points a week. On weeks like Travis Kelce has, where he puts up 20, that's where it's an automatic W for you. If you gotta have a guy that's consistently good for you, get you in the double-digit points, that's a great thing to have.
You heard it from the birthday boy himself. Stock up on your tight ends. Go a little bit different of a route.
I don't know about stocking up, but get a good number one. Good number one.
And know that if your other people in your league are stocking up on receivers, you can also supplement through tight ends and be on the lookout for that flex. If you hit on that flex, That's where a lot of guys come from behind, come out of nowhere that people didn't even think that they were going to be competing for their league championship. But hopefully you guys enjoy that little bit of fantasy football talk. Now we'll get into our beats of the week, our normal segments to close things out. We'll talk a little bit about what to expect moving forward. But now beats of the week, win you guys some